The odds of recession as I see them is around just in favor of there being some kind of recession. I would say a 45% chance of a mild recession by the start of 2024. And this has gone up as I do these scenario forecasts every few months. This kind of scenario of the middle scenario here of a mild recession where inflation remains high, the Fed hikes interest rates, and we see some layoffs, but only a modest increase in the unemployment rate. That's the kind of modal scenario. That middle scenario is when you talk to most people, they think, yeah, we're probably headed for a mild recession. Some people think we're headed for a severe recession on the bottom. I think that's extremely unlikely, and I can give you reasons why, but the core reason is just the balance sheets, the kind of financial health of households and of businesses are still really strong. And so other than the housing market, we see really strong indicators of consumer spending, of business investment, and of course, the labor market. The unemployment rate's still below 4%. I just think that on the horizon, by early 2024, it's very unlikely there is going to be a severe recession. I get a lot of flack for this first scenario, this top scenario, which is a 45% nearly even odds of no recession. Some people look at me and think I have three heads when I say that, but I think I'm going to give you the kind of the bullish case, the some would say a Pollyannish, overly optimistic case. But I think there's a decent chance, especially with the numbers we got this morning, where inflation is starting to really turn a corner. There's a decent chance that in 2023, the labor market continues to be tight. Yeah, we get maybe a slight uptick in the unemployment rate. There's some layoffs like at the tech companies, but consumer spending continues to chug along strong. Yeah, the housing market goes through a strong correction, but we have that modest growth that I showed you, that 1% growth. And if that continues, this tight labor market, maybe it gets a little easier, it cools off, but it still remains a huge challenge. And so how does that intersect with pay transparency? What it means is, as a recruiter, as a TA leader, as an HR leader, if you're faced with a landscape where some of your competitors think that there is going to be a recession and they're maybe pulling back on hiring, but if you see your underlying demand and business growth justify your recruiting efforts, and so you're still trying to find workers, but you're met with a still tight labor market that requires you to include pay, how do you adapt? I'm not going to tell you what to do as a recruiter, but what I can show you from today's presentation is that, number one, job seekers like pay transparency. And so if you're trying to recruit candidates, you're going to get more eyeballs if you operate in a jurisdiction that requires pay transparency, so like California pretty soon or New York pretty soon. Job seekers are going to be a little bit more interested in searching for work because it's kind of like browsing Zillow, as I said earlier. So number one, as a recruiter, if you're faced with this landscape next year, if you're in a jurisdiction that requires pay transparency, you're going to see an uptick in job seeker engagement. Number two, initially, you'll probably see some competitors or your own company pull back from hiring in jurisdictions where they don't want to if you don't want to cooperate with pay transparency, like we saw in Colorado, you'll probably see some postings shift away from jurisdictions that require it. In the short term, I don't think that this is sustainable. As California and New York comes online, I think this negative hit when states pass a pay transparency law, that negative impact on job postings is probably going to diminish as we go forward in time. And you'll just see the positive impact of job seeker engagement. And finally, in terms of the actual job ad performance, if you're a TA leader and you're trying to manage a campaign for recruiting and you have job ad spending, if you want to optimize that, SAM's research shows, based on over 10 million job ads, the performance in terms of cost per click is cheaper, right? The summary here is that, yeah, we may be headed for a mild recession next year, but it's a recession where there's still a pretty strong underlying labor market. And if you need to recruit, consider the impact of these pay transparency laws and try to use them to your advantage. That's my summary here, is that use these laws to your advantage.